Hey everybody, and welcome back to another new and noteworthy mod review. Today we're going to take a look at the automatic storage mod that we can find over at the farmingsimulator.com website or the in-game mod hub. And as of the 1.0 release, this mod is available for PC only. This mod does make use of custom scripts, so I highly doubt that we're going to see this mod get updated and released for consoles. Now, before we get into the video, this video is brought to you by Brett Pruitt. Thank you for being a farm baron. So I have to say, this mod is rather interesting and a rather unique storage mod. A bit different than some of the other storage mods that we've seen. For sure, the way it operates is pretty rudimentary, and that's not to be said in a bad way. But it makes this mod very, very flexible over and above some of the other storage building mods that are basically looking for very specific fill types. These buildings will basically accept anything that is pallet shaped. Okay, so there are two different buildings in this pack. We have the storage shed, which we see right here, and then we have a much larger storage warehouse over here. Now the storage warehouse is going to hold 22 racks, and each rack will hold 12 pallets each. So the storage warehouse will hold up to 264 pallets, whereas the storage shed only holds 48. And I say only, right? Only holds 48 pallets. Now let's take a look at these in the shop. So if we go to placeables and sheds, we have the warehouse, $87,000, $100 a day, and you can see it holds 264 pallets. This is a fairly large building. You want to make sure you have a nice flat space. It does spin nice on its center, so you can easily position this wherever you want. And it's pretty easy to locate where the input and output triggers are and where the front of the building might be. Then we have a smaller shed, $28,000 for $30 a day. Again, we can rotate this nice and easy. Now, this one rotates on that front center pillar. So that is kind of the center of that, given the fact that it's also using the triggers as kind of its rotational body. But again, you can kind of figure out where the front of the building is and where the two output triggers go. Now, the way these buildings work, and I've kind of already alluded to it, is that they simply take a pallet that is in the input trigger and they move it to the storage rack. Okay, so we have 12 pallets on this particular storage rack. We can walk up to here, we can hit R, and now we're presented with a little menu. We have the contents of this rack, and we can select it and move it to the outbound pad. The small building will allow you to output 6 pallets at a time. So we can confirm that. And the pallets that we have selected are now moved from the rack to the output trigger. And at this point, we could basically do whatever we wanted with these pallets. I'm going to use super strength and basically put them back over here into the input trigger. And then we'll see how we store pallets in here. And I'll describe kind of how this is different than other storage mods while we're doing this. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the Gtx Storage Buildings, because those are the mods that I'm most familiar with, and therefore I feel most comfortable kind of comparing to this building. The Gtx Storage mods, they take an input, a very specific input per mod, and allow you to store it. And when you store those, you're not actually storing the full pallet. You're storing a visual representation of the pallet. And basically all the information about the pallet is stored in an XML table within the placeable itself in your save game. How that differs from this mod is that we are storing each individual pallet on these racks. But according to the save game, all of these pallets still physically exist. So let's store this. We'll walk up to the button here and we'll hit R. And you're going to see these pallets magically appear over there. So all of these pallets still exist as individual items in the XML. And what that means is each of these pallets is still very much real. We can move it out of the rack, put it back in here. We can spawn it back into the rack. We can walk over here to the rack and we can output it this way. And there we go. But these are all still very much real pallets stored in your XML. So how does this come into play? Let's say you use this building to store 48 wool pallets. Okay. In your save game, you would still have 48 individual wool pallets being listed. When you're in game, the game engine is still rendering out 48 individual wool pallets, keeping track of those, managing the collisions, etc. Compare that to the GTX storage building, and the way it works is when you place, let's say, 48 wool pallets into that storage building, it's only rendering a low poly representation of those 48 pallets. All 48 of those pallets are actually stored in an XML table within the placeable. If you look at your items XML in the save game, you're not going to find 48 pallet entries for wool. You're going to find one entry for the storage building. And within that storage building, you're going to find a table that's going to basically list that you have 48 pallets of 2,000 or 1,000 liter wool. How that comes into play is if your system has a hard time basically drawing and rendering 48 pallets of wool in one small area, and you start to have performance problems, you're still going to have those performance problems with 48 pallets stored in this shed. The GTX storage building, though, would probably help you out because when you're storing those pallets, they're not actually being rendered by the game engine. The game engine is only rendering the building and a low poly representation of what 48 pallets would look like. And only after you spawn those pallets out of the GTX storage building does the game engine actually render them as individual pallets. So in that respect, the GTX building would probably give you better performance. But the only thing that you can put into the GTX wool storage building is wool. You can literally put any pallet in these two buildings without any issue whatsoever. So they both kind of serve their own purpose. They both are very much unique and interesting mods. And I would say that neither storage building replaces potentially the need for the other storage building's existence. These two mods are really, really interesting from the standpoint of its flexibility, being able to basically accept any pallet of any product, whereas many of the other storage buildings that we have today only accept a limited type of input. So you can see here, we've basically testing this mod with all of the in-game pallets and the straw harvest pallets. Now, if you had the mod Realistic Seeder, where you had an individual pallet for every seed, well, you could store those in here without any issue whatsoever. If you had a production building that produced pallets, again, you could use this building to store those without any issue whatsoever. So I do think this mod definitely has its place, but I also think it's important that people that use the mod have a full understanding of basically how it's working so that they will understand that if they have a system that sometimes has issues when you have several pallets in one place, then you probably will have those same issues using this particular mod, because that's what you have. You just literally have 48 or up to 264 pallets in one place. This building simply makes them easy to organize, easy to store, and easy to get out. So guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please go ahead and click that like button. Let me know in the comments if you had a chance to already use the automatic storage mod, what you think of it. Has it helped you out? Have you run into any issues with it? And until next time, happy farming.